What is up, homies? Welcome back to another review from Heroes Reforged. Today we are reviewing Avatar: The Way of Water. Before we get into the review, I want to let you know something very exciting. We recently did a rewatch of the original Avatar movie in 3D. You can watch that on our YouTube channel, or you can go over to Patreon, patreon.com/Heroes Reforged. We have the entire version uncut and time-coded. If you want to watch along with us, you can use the Disney Plus version, or if you do have a 3D TV in the 3D version, you can watch that along. We worked in 3D, so we have a lot of insight into the 3D of the movie. So we talk about the 3D and we talk about the tech of the film and we talk about the story, and it was a really fun watch along, and hopefully if you guys enjoy it, we'll do more in the future. We were literally just talking about what if we actually shot one of these reviews in 3D.
Oh, I think that'd be rad. I do want us to clarify, we didn't work on Avatar.
Not on Avatar,
no. In other 3D movies, so we just kind of speak to that sort of experience.
I would say combined, we have almost like 15-20 years of 3D experience.
There you go.
That's a lot.
All of us together? Yeah, all of us together.
And what, like 50 movies, 55, 60 movies? I don't even know. So many.
Movies somewhere around there.
But yeah, so check that out and let us know if you enjoy that, and we'll definitely consider doing more because we really do enjoy 3D, like genuinely, and we just want to spread the good love of 3D because we think it's a fun format if it's used really well. Before we do spoilers, we're going to give our initial thoughts, what we thought about the movie. The one thing that I would say about this movie that I really did like is that you don't really have to worry about spoilers too much. It's not a Marvel movie, like you don't need to hold everything so close to the chest. Which is kind of a nice relief for once for one of these big blockbuster films. We did get to see it a little bit early initially. We saw it in Dolby 3D and we saw it in high frame rate, so we'll talk about all that stuff. Just my initial reaction to the movie itself, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was incredibly dynamic, incredibly engaging, and that goes for the visuals and the story. And I know that one of the big criticisms of the first film is the simplicity of the story. It's something that I actually really enjoy about the story, and I think that the second film also has in some ways a simple sort of plot, but I think the thing that kept me really invested was I really liked the characters. I like Jake, I like Neytiri, I like their kids, I like the new characters that were introduced to from the other tribe, played by Cliff Curtis and Kate Winslet. So the movie does a really good job of hooking me with the visuals, but then keeping me invested for 3 hours with the story. My favorite joke that John Landau has made, he's like, the movie's not 3 hours and 10 minutes, it's 2 hours and 72 minutes. And I'm like, I'm engaged for the full thing from start to end. So I think you did a really good job, and I really do think that it was worth the wait because it is a beautiful looking film, and all the accolades that it's been nominated for, I think are very much deserved. I know that sometimes I feel like we're in the minority of people, which I think has gotten bigger though in recent months since people have rewatched the first one, of people who really just genuinely enjoy the Avatar movies.
Right.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I think it sometimes feels like we are in the minority, Adam, too, because we live in Los Angeles and sometimes we've done shows and different things online where we talk about movies. So we meet a lot of like movie people, movie critics, pundits, people that are online talking about movies. And a lot of those folks, like you're saying, because the first film is pretty easy to clock, like what the story is pretty early on. It's one of those cases where that type of audience and some regular audiences, when they can see the matrix code of how something is designed, they sort of automatically go to like, well, this is bad. This isn't surprising to me. This isn't a twist on a classic narrative. It's just, I can see exactly what they're doing. I'm now disengaged. And I have, after watching this movie with you guys and rewatching the first movie with you guys, and this was a film that when it came out, I always enjoyed the original Avatar, certainly, but really when we watched it together, and I think it's in our YouTube reaction, I kind of ended up feeling like, man, this is the most I've ever enjoyed the first Avatar, And
absolutely,
and that's a testament to that movie and how well it was put together. And I try not to look at something like, okay, if you can see the matrix code of what this thing is influenced by and how it was put together, like, does that make it bad? I try to think about what I'm feeling within the moment, and the first movie, but especially the second one, which I'll say I enjoy the second one more. I like The Way of Water better than the original. I think that it has a better story, better characters, more engaging moments, more beautiful, if we can even say that, imagery. Of course, the CG is redonkulously good. And you get to some moments in the third act that we were like in our small-ish screening, on the Disney lot, which is very cool, and watching it in 3D, which is even better. But we were like, with some other film critics and stuff, like cheering and reacting in big ways because it just brings out those emotions in you. So my overall take on Avatar and Avatar 2 is I've started to become very defensive about these movies, and they're not even my favorite movies. I don't even think they're my favorite James Cameron movie. I still think I like Terminator 2 the best. That's my masterpiece for me. But the way that some people so quickly dismiss the entirety of this film, usually based on like, no, the story is like Dances with Wolves, dismissed. And I go, there's so much more to even just the world building, the artistry, the CG, the motion capture animation, the effects, the 3D, how stereo is used to enhance the story. Every single element, it adds to a movie-going experience that when people were rewatching the first Avatar on Disney Plus the past few weeks and kind of being like, really? This is the movie that made the most money? I'm like, that's not fair. Because it's not the same as going to the theater and watching it. And my review of Avatar, The Way of Water is, it's a great film, but if you don't go to the theater to see it and to see it in 3D, you're missing some part of it, because that's a huge part of the experience of the movie.
Yeah. I would agree and echo all of that. I recently tried to watch it before we started doing our whole rewatch to get ready for this. I try to watch it on TV, and it doesn't hold your attention. You're missing out so much just because like it's not at the highest resolution that it can be. Like, and it sucks to say that these kind of limitations really add to your enjoyment of the movie, because at the end of the day, you should enjoy a movie whether it's high resolution or not, right? Some people can't help that they can't watch 3D or have the full like highest presentation home theater experience. But at the same time, the way James Cameron has made these movies, like you said, Hector, it's a movie going experience. Like they are meant to be seen in a mega big format in the clearest, most brightest screen you can see. Because when I was sitting there watching the movie, I could not believe what I would literally was incredible to me, not credible. Like I thought some shots were people in costume. It looked so damn good. And there was guys next to me who were audibly gasping when some of these shots popped up. And I was like, this is what you have to see this movie as. This is the format you have to see this. And not just that, but it's also the story was solid all the way through. Like there's not a single weak point in the story where it kind of dipped down. And I don't think a movie like this can afford to kind of like lose you at any specific chapter or at any specific point, because it's so long. It's really easy for people to check out. So even though the story doesn't have gotcha moments or twists and turns that you couldn't have predicted, it's so solid all the way through. And I think that James Cameron really has a lot to say about the environment, about Native people, about how we should be treating each other, about how we are in family groups. Like there's so many different ideas that he presents here, and it all kind of has to do with this idea of like being together and working together. So the concepts I think are coming from a really good place, and I feel like that echoes throughout the whole movie, like in the VFX, in the storytelling, in the pacing, in the editing, and even in the music and everything else. I think my favorite character was a character, I guess it would be kind of spoilers if I said this character, but it was a character that you haven't really seen in the trailers very much. I just think that this movie was worth the 10-year wait. Or how was it? 10 years? No, 13-year wait, right? 13-year wait. This movie, 100,000% was worth that 10-year wait, because it wasn't like Black Adam. And sorry to call out Black Adam, but like that movie we waited so long to get, and it looked like a 2000 and early 2000 superhero movie, where this movie looks better than anything that's out now and anything that's going to come out within the next 5-7 years. Because I don't think there's going to be any movie studios that can match this at this point. But I do think it was a big leap in the movie industry. The bar has been raised. James Cameron is telling people how to do it, and everybody needs to follow at least some of his new ideas or presentation or technology or whatever he's doing behind the scenes that filmmakers are hopefully asking him for.
Well, the big thing that you said to me, Augustine, when we walked out was when the live action stuff is mixed in with the stuff that they shoot in the volume or on green screen and blue screen, the compositing is so clean. And it's at 48 frames per second. So because you have double the frames, your margin for error is minimal. Like it's almost non-existent. Like everything has to be razor sharp, because as the audience, we can see the seams with all the extra data that we're watching. So just the fact that the compositing itself is so clean, and we watch every superhero movie that exists, and there's a lot of times we watch these these movies or these shows and we're like, ooh, those keys around the hair are not that good. It's not good.
Yeah.
But then when you think about the way Marvel makes their films, where they have to pump them out in 12 to 18 months, I'm like, it's impossible. It's impossible to meet the level of really Avatar. Like the Marvel slate for the multiverse saga would have to span like 10 or 15 years to have the quality that Avatar does, and they'll never do it. But if they did, I mean, the quality level of everything would just go up so much. But nice. and I think that is, every time we talk about Avatar, we talk about how like the gold standard. Avatar 1 set the gold standard in 2009 moving forward, and I think this is going to do it again. And of course, there's going to be movies platinum standard. Yeah, this is really
beyond anything. Yeah,
and I think for big budget blockbuster films, if you really want to compete and you really want to feel like you are helping sort of push the technology forward. And not even just the technology, the quality forward. Avatar really is a bar that you should look at and go, how do we achieve something that is as close to that as possible? Like, I think in order to get 100% of what Avatar can do, you just have to have James Cameron do it. But I think that filmmakers can learn a lot from these movies. And how they apply technology to the storytelling and how it supports the storytelling. And I think that like that's really the way forward. So I think it just technologically it's an incredible feat, but like Hector was saying earlier, it needs sort of the story, the tech, and the 3D and all of those parts to really make it feel like a whole cinematic experience.
Dude, and the audience adds to everybody just like feeling that same moment communally. Like there's cheering moments in Act 3. There's cheering moments when violence happens on the bad guys, and we were like, oh yeah, like it was awesome.
It was great.
But I want to ask, do you guys have any criticisms of the film? Because I have a few. There's a couple things I didn't love about the movie or the experience or the whole thing of it all. The first one I want to jump into, and I don't know if we've had a chance to talk about this yet, so maybe I'm in the wrong, Adam. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But I did not love the high frame rate thing, only because some shots were super, super silky smooth, and then it would go to another shot, and maybe because my eyes and brain was used to the other frame rate, it felt jittery and juddery to some degree. So my recommendation would be, it was really cool, but maybe save it for like a second or third watch. That first time, if you can find it, just at a standard frame rate all the way through, but in 3D would be my recommendation. How did you guys feel about that?
A little mixed, because when we watched the remaster of the first Avatar, it was redone at 48 frames per second. The experience of watching it at 48 frames per second felt smoother than this one at times. The stuff that you're talking about, where you're watching 48 frames and it almost felt like a computer is trying to process all the data and it can't keep up with the speed of the movie. So it kind of felt like there was a little bit of a lag happening. And that was something that kind of surprised me because I wasn't expecting that. But having like a little bit of insight into the motion grading that they did for this film, I think it's a technology that is still slowly evolving. And I do wonder that for the third movie, if they're going to take some of that feedback and observations that people made about it and see if they can tweak it in a way to make it kind of feel a little bit smoother at parts, because there's definitely parts where it feels like totally normal, totally clean, and it doesn't even feel like you're watching something at 48 frames per second. It feels like 24, but it's the action stuff sometimes that I'm like, some of it looks great, and some of it I'm like, oh, this feels a little bit like it's overloading the system almost. So and I don't know, truthfully, I don't know how difficult it is going to be to find a 3D version that's not at 48 frames per second. I think it really depends on where you live, because I know for Los Angeles, a lot of not all of them, but I know a lot of the projectors that are playing it in like Dolby 3D or IMAX 3D, I think most of them are playing it at 48 frames per second. So
what about Real D? What about my dudes over at Real D? How we
Real
doing?
D, I think is also, I think they have both versions available, but I think that's always my big issue with the tech stuff is I get excited about it, but I'm the type of person who's going to try to find where to watch it in what format. The average person is just going to walk in and be like, I want to watch it in 3D. They don't know if it's Real D 3D. They don't know if it's IMAX 3D. They don't know if it's Dolby. So I think it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes. So I wish there was a way to have more transparency as to what version is playing in what theater, because I think there will be people who will walk away saying the 48 frames didn't bother me. I thought it would look better than it has before. And there definitely will be people who walk out saying like, it's still not really for me, which is fine.
Yeah, I think they were smart in ramping the look of the 48 frames. I still don't understand why it was mostly happening in the big, long wide shots, because as soon as it would come back to the close-ups, mid shots or whatever of everybody, it would stop. it didn't feel like 48 frames, or it just felt a little bit more normal. So I think the more that I watched the movie, the less I noticed the 48 frames. And I'm a person who really strongly dislikes high frame rate stuff because it hasn't been done right. And I feel like this movie, even though it does have its place where the 48 frames or the high frame rate is very apparent, I feel like it's a good step forward to where it's making it a little bit smoother. But I think you're right, Hector. I think there were some shots that might be off-putting to people, especially at the beginning, because it starts off with like really high frame rate stuff. And if you're not used to or ready for it, then it's really going to catch people off guard.
I got another one for you guys. And I think at this point we can say kind of a spoiler warning, so we can talk about some of the specifics of like the story and everything. But like you said, Adam, honestly, this movie has I thought I saw somebody online talking about it, how like it's kind of the anti film Twitter movie, or like online movie, because it's because there is no big reveals or spoilers to tell. Once you kind of know what the premise is, that's the whole movie. That's it. That's the whole movie. There's nothing that's like a big, oh, don't let yourself get spoiled. It means that I think that it's not relying on that kind of storytelling. It's just relying on really strong character work and motivation and plot and things that happen to these characters and how they react. And immersion. And I think it also means that when people watch this 6 months from now, a year from now, whenever, that it still is going to have the same effect. It's not something like, oh yeah, I heard about this part. It's like people are going to be sucked in. But here's a spoiler specific that I wanted to talk about. I love Sigourney Weaver. I think she's got to be one of my favorite actors of all time. And I think it's so cool that she came back to play the child of Neytiri and Jake Sully, but not their biological child, but they adopted her through the Avatar body, and she plays Kitty. But the problem is, for me, is as a teenage girl character, I was sometimes taken out a little bit because I'm like, but that's Sigourney Weaver's old woman voice, like that, like she is a woman of age, and it threw me a little bit, and that's the thing. That's one thing I want to kind of discuss is it's a part of a larger conversation, which I think is interesting, but also just specifically that character, who I love that character. She's one of my favorite characters in the movie, but just knowing that it's Sigourney Weaver and once in a while hearing her Sigourney Weaver voice come out of the thing, I'm like, even if they modified it, she sounds more like a woman in her 50s or 60s than she does a teenager. But the idea of motion capture is really interesting because it's like anybody from any background of any age can play any character of any background of any age, which is all kind of true to an extent. But the other sort of criticism I have, not just of this movie, but of the past movie, is that the sort of optics of like, okay, what's this movie about? It's about a white guy, Jake Sully, who dons blueface, who fakes being an indigenous person. And
it's the white savior trope.
Planning to kill them, but then because he falls in love with the indigenous woman, who's maybe a little hypersexualized in that first movie, turns on everybody and decides to become, but then he's accepted, and it's that white savior trope. And in this film, I loved seeing Cliff Curtis's character because he's the chieftain of like the water tribe, if you will. And I also love Kate Winslet as an actor. She's phenomenal, but she's also the chieftain in it. And the motion capture of this movie almost gives some white actors who are playing I guess it's really only Kate Winslet and Sam Worthington, but Worthington is supposed to be a white guy, Jake Sully. But Kate Winslet comes in and I'm like, she kind of has an accent. And I'm almost at a level of like, is it offensive? These are not real people that are being depicted, but they're kind of based on Maori representation. You know what I mean? When the male chief, Tonawari, I think Tonawari is the character played by Cliff Curtis. When he does like the haka thing, it's so great. And it had such a great response when he does that thing. But I'm like, that's so cool. That's also Maori culture. Also, Kate Winslet is playing one of these characters. Like, there's a weird, like, okay, sure, motion capture gives all actors of any background opportunities, but like, are these white actors taking a chance? Like, is Sigourney Weaver, did she take a role from like a 15-year-old actor who could have really used the exposure of being in Avatar, The Way of Water? And Sigourney still could have been in the movie as her previous character through the flashbacks, through the whatever. But anyway, that's my main sort of criticism is like some of those optics are still there just with the Kate Winslet of it. But I really like those characters. And it's more of the Sigourney age thing was my criticism. That's kind of what I want to talk about.
I think the voice thing is, I think if there was a way to make that character maybe like 21, 22,
Right.
maybe like somewhere in the mid 20s. I think it would have been sort of like an easier pill to swallow, and you suspend your disbelief a lot more. But after a while, in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, this voice is it doesn't really fit a 15-year-old. But then I'm like, it's a fucking clone of a using the DNA of a clone, the avatar, from
the tree,
whatever.
You know,
what the fuck?
The tree downloaded the DNA. It's fine. It's fine.
But also that character, I think, just based on some of the teases that we get, it's going to be interesting to see, because that character is clearly going to have some connection to Awa and Sigourney's original character, who's now a part of sort of like the
Awa,
part of Awa, basically.
Yeah.
And also something from like the human side, because there is some mystery about like who her father is. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be interesting. So I think it makes sense from that perspective why you would use Sigourney Weaver. I also think I think you could have easily got away with using another 15-year-old actor who maybe you kind of fuse the look of the character to look like half like Sigourney, half like this actor. But after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm just glad Sigourney Weaver's in the movie, because I love her so much. She's so great. And this opportunity to play this role, it's kind of unheard of for a person that is like her age. And I'm not saying she's old, but she's definitely getting older. I think she's in her 60s or 70s now. And when you hear her talk about the things that they did, the physical preparation for this movie, I'm like,
the diving she had to learn, it's awesome.
The learning to breathe under the water. I'm like, if I was her, I would also probably want to do it, because I think it would be a cool opportunity.
She's 73 years old. She's 73 and playing like a 15-year-old.
She's great.
It is awesome.
It's so good.
Great performance in the movie, but it's just that I know that it's her is kind of like a little bit of a mind fuck.
See, I came in not knowing it was her, so it didn't bother me at the slightest. I had no idea that I'm learning this right now that she played this character. So to me, I'm just like, okay, cool. I think my biggest takeaway with that character and what they're presenting here is that she's going to be kind of like the Avatar from Avatar: The Last Airbender, whereas like she's going to be the one to kind of unite the world and push the humans away. I think making her a young character is smart, because that's the character who's going to carry us through part 3, part 4, and part 5. Like that's the character who we're going to follow the torch
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jake Sully, I don't know how long we're going to follow him, but it seems like he definitely took a back seat in this movie. Yeah, we're definitely spending a lot of time with the kids and really connecting with the kids, and really
I thought he was going to die in this one. I thought he was straight up going to maybe, but he might die in the third, and then 4 and 5 is their kids. Yep. Yeah, potentially. Yeah. But I have a feeling, I mean, James Cameron. Sorry, we've been talking about James Gunn a lot recently. James Cameron obviously has a very clear story arc for what's going to happen with these characters. I have a feeling that the next couple of movies are going to be super wild in the fact that she's going to be like a bender. She's going to be like being able to talk to animals and like really using the forces of nature. And I think having Sigourney Weaver as that character who, like, you know, Sigourney Weaver, it's going to be hard to change who she is and what she sounds like. And so it's kind of more fitting that that's the voice of her as she gets older. Right. So like, yes, it's going to be a character who you don't have to change the voice actor for. You necessarily have to change any of the physics of what she looks like, because they probably have the aged up model of her built already. They're just like using it in different ways, right? So I don't really mind that choice. And to go back to your other question, Hector, about using the Maori culture as a basis of the water tribe that we see here, I don't think it's that. I can't remember those names, dude. I think that's my criticism.
I have it pulled up right here. I'm cheating.
I think that's my criticism of the movie is I can't remember anybody's name. Like the names are so obviously it's a whole nother. It's a whole nother.
Sully and Neytiri, like those are kind of easy to remember. Quaritch is easy to remember.
A little easy to remember. But yeah, I can't tell you anybody else's name because I don't know, because it's a whole other language that they presented. But to once again, to go back to the Maori thing, I think that it's separated enough from what we know as human and earth and anything that's familiar to us that it's okay to like pull things just like Namor. He wasn't strictly Maya or Aztec or Inca or just inspired It's kind of like a melding of all these things. I just think it was a great inspiration for this tribe.
I agree. And I also want to say too, back to my sort of questioning of like having white actors play some of the Na'vi, whether they're the water tribe or the forest tribe or whatever, like, is that weird? The other thing I'm thinking too is like, well, I don't want just actors of color to play the Na'vi, because then that really does feel like, yeah, a bunch of actors of color are on the Avatar movies, but we never see their skin tone. Like they're not, there's, you know, there's not enough human actors of color in this movie, kind of with the two movies so far. But it especially with like Zoe Saldana, CCH Pounder, Cliff Curtis, these are amazing actors. And I'm so happy that they're there. But if every single one of them were an actor of color, I would maybe feel a little weird about that too. Of like, okay, what are we really? Maybe they're not far enough removed in a sci-fi setting to be able to bring in white actors and actors of other backgrounds to play those characters. I don't know. There's a lot of optics. There's a lot of things I probably would have done differently even with the first movie. But dude, James Cameron and team, they're the people that have to figure that out. And they also have to effectively answer to it. You know, they have to answer for it. So if those questions come up, will they learn from that? Will they take any of that criticism and kind of change and affect the story? I don't know. I will say that from the first movie to this one, Jake Sully and Neytiri took a back seat. They're almost not the main characters for me. And I kind of really love that. Jake Sully, I think, as a character is better in this movie than in the first one. I think Sam Worthington has a better performance in this movie than in the first one. He's still, that's that generational story. I'm so invested in the kid characters. I think they're vastly more interesting characters than the Jake Sully and Neytiri. Also, Zoe Saldana was fantastic, kind of underused in this movie. Maybe she'll have bigger roles in like, part 3 or going forward. But they're solid. Sigourney's solid. But I really liked the kid characters. You become so invested in their story that I just want to see that continue there. So maybe they did take some lessons from the first movie, because I remember the criticism was Jake Sully's not the most dynamic protagonist of all movie history, and maybe Cameron was like, okay, let's do this. How about these characters? How about this son character who feels this pressure, or this daughter character who is 8 years old and she's like, I can't believe I'm tied up again. So funny.
That was great. Yeah, such great moments.
I also do think that this time around, because they're doing all these sequels, they wrote them all, and they shot all of 2, they shot 90% of 3, and they've shot, they said like the opening sort of like prologue thing for 4. Wow. So it makes me feel like by the time we get to 4, at some point, there might be some sort of a time shift. Maybe that's when characters like Jake Sully and Neytiri aren't around anymore. And then maybe the 5th movie is like nothing but the kids. So I think maybe that could play into sort of like the idea of them getting older and all that sort of stuff, where a character like Kitty, if she has Sigourney Weaver's voice, it kind of fits better. But knowing that they've already written all these stories and the actors have read all the like they know the whole story already, it makes me kind of excited and very okay with characters like Jake and Neytiri being sort of in the background, because now we're developing the next generation of characters, and in the 3rd movie you can kind of focus on everyone and you don't have to really build anything anymore, and it's just about what's the adventure, what's the story. And then with Quaritch being back in the story, it's also a character that we know everything about him now too, so it's all about,
loved him.
I feel like the battle between the Na'vi and the humans, and figuring out how a character like Spider, who's Quaritch's son, plays into this, and how he's sort of the in-between both worlds. It's really, I feel like there's a lot of really interesting like dynamics and story and depth that you can, like things that you can really deeply go into about just relationships and just like cultures and things. So that's what makes me excited about what this movie sets up and how well it does it. On top of the fact, 90% or for like 80% of the movie, I'm like, am I watching National Geographic? What the fuck is happening? Dude, this is crazy.
There was so many moments in the movie where we were just existing with the Na'vi and the tribe, and I was like, I could just sit here and watch this all day long. Yeah. This is awesome. It felt like we were just, Adam, like you were saying, a National Geographic kind of documentary, or just like a day in the life of like a Na'vi, because we never really got that in the first movie. The Na'vi tribe was just kind of like in the background, and we got to see like the trials of Jake Sully and what it took for him to become a Na'vi, but not necessarily what the day-to-day Na'vi kind of life was. And this was really, really cool, given that the visuals were so spot on. There was moments where I was like holding my breath like they were underwater, because I was like, they need to breathe. Like this is stressful. And I really like that they connected with nature, and the fact that with the whale kind of tribe that they had, which was my favorite character, the one I didn't say earlier. The whale. I really really enjoyed having the whale kind of storyline there, giving the humans like another reason to go and plunder this planet because there's a resource that stops aging, which is crazy. Like if there was an element like that, you bet your ass the United States of America would invade that fucking planet in an instant, right? Like that's what would happen. It says a lot about James Cameron and how he feels about nature and how he feels about the earth and really the things that we should be finding important in our day-to-day lives rather than a lot of the things that we are consumed with on the daily anyway. So I think this movie speaks to multiple levels of different people in their different life stages as well. It's like, anybody can go see it, from a child to be wowed by the visuals to an older person who, you know, just wants to go and, like your dad, Hector, he couldn't believe and he felt lucky that he was seeing this kind of stuff in his life.
Oh man.
Like there's something for everybody in these movies. It's insane.
I cannot wait to take him to see this in 3D. It's going to be insane. It's going to be beautiful. You're absolutely right, Augustine. Like kids can see it and they can be wowed by what they're seeing, but also relate to the kid characters.
Absolutely.
And adults can see it. Parents can see it. And the Jake and Neytiri side of it is a whole different, like Jake's frustration as a father in this is so universal and so relatable. I love even the, every time something had to do with the whales and that whaling captain, that real bastard of a guy. And then the Jermaine Clement character, who's the scientist, who's like, he's drinking. He's so depressed that this is his life, but he's still there. He's still doing it. I thought Giovanni Ribisi, great to see him for a quick second, but also Edie Falco, great job as this general that was like, no, we're getting this planet ready for humans because Earth is dying. And you're like, oh, that's going to be 3 and 4 and 5. There's so much to explore, but the key messages of this movie are we have to do better with our own planet. We have to do better with the life, the beautiful, gorgeous life that is on this planet, especially when it comes to creatures like whales who are so unfathomably beautiful. We don't understand anything. You know, scientists who are experts in whales are constantly telling us how beautiful and how special they are and what they do for the planet. And we've killed them and we don't care. And it's so effing sad. And the other thing I love is anti-military this film is, just laying it out and being like, this is not good. We as a species should not prioritize this kind of behavior. And I love it. So is this movie and is this overall story like still kind of weird, maybe problematic with its optics of like the races of Jake Sully and the act? That stuff's in there, but that's going to be for James Cameron and John Landau and whoever else on the story to like answer to. But with so many other messages in the film, I am 100% in agreement with those messages. We felt them too. It's not just a movie that's like, hey, save the whales. It's like we felt the pain of this animal.
I got teary-eyed in multiple parts of that movie because I was like, God damn, I'm like really feeling this emotion right now.
Absolutely, and because 100%. They're using that fake sci-fi world of like, oh, the people here, the Navi can connect to the animals and can literally bond. But it's just an exaggeration of what humans can feel in real life if they had that empathy. So, man, the last thing I want to bring up and kind of talk about is just the 3D of it. It's ridiculous. It's the best 3D I've ever seen in a film.
It's flawless. It's so
immersive, stunning. Gorgeous, fun, exciting, cool. Anytime people tell me, what is 3D even? Everything I just said, when good 3D works, that's what it's about, baby. You're in the ocean with them,
Just like in the first movie, the 3D changes the movie into a completely different thing. Like it's no longer just a movie. It's like it gives it this really real tactile. I feel like it makes you bond with the characters and just the movie in general. As a whole, it completely. I have a friend who worked on the movie, and I was like, dude, you guys killed it with the 3D. And he was like, well, that's the way James prefers people to watch it, just in 3D. Like you have to do this. Do it for James. Do it for Hector. Do it for Adam. Do it for Augustine. Like just go and watch this movie in 3D because it's the shining example of what 3D should be and how it can be used properly and how it should be used, honestly, because it's not a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. It's an immersive storytelling element that can be used in this way to change the way you perceive a movie.
Man, I'm so happy the first time we saw it was in 3D. I'm so happy because I cannot. There's some moments I'm like,
if Disney would have been like, we're inviting you to a screening. It's in 2D though. I'd have been like, absolutely hell no.
Sorry.
No.
You better go back to formula. You better fix that shit.
The last thing that I want to say is something that Adam and I talked about on the car ride home, is thinking about the 10-year-old kid who's going to watch this movie for the first time and have it like blow his mind to the point where he's going to go to Cal Arts, he's going to go to USC Film School, and he's going to eventually be up there with the bigwigs and say, oh, well, Way of Water just absolutely changed my life. And that's what this movie is. This movie is one of those movies that's like Lord of the Rings, that's like Star Wars, that's like, it's up there with those movies that define cinema and what cinema can be and what cinema should be. And I cannot wait to see. I think overall what kids that age.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to see what the kids that you just described, Augustine, what movies they're making in 20 years. Damn, I want to live that long.
Let's go. Live that long to like see these movies.
God.
Come on, we will. We'll be here.
Oh my God.
Come on.
Yeah. My final thoughts on the movie is just, it was just such an incredible experience. And there were definitely moments where I felt emotional, especially when, like you guys are talking about the underwater stuff with the sea life and the people. And it really gets you. Like if you really allow yourself to just be immersed into the world and you're just willing to like live with these characters and go through the motions of what they're going through, like Augustine was saying, just basically living in the world, existing in the world, really trying to understand the emotions the characters are going through. For me, it was so satisfying. That movie ended and I was like, you could have hit play again and I could have sat there for 3 more hours watching.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really got that rewatchability.
Beautiful.
So cannot wait.
Cannot wait again.
We're already talking about how when this movie comes out on 3D Blu-ray, which Disney, if you don't put this on 3D Blu-ray, I swear to God, I know where your studio is, and I'm going to have some words with Robert Iger.
I'm going to camp out in front of Bob Iger's office. Excuse me, Bob.
3D.
And you know what? You know what? I'll go one step further. Disney, if you don't send us a free copy of Avatar: The Way of Water on 3D Blu-ray so that we can happily review it on our channel that's about to hit or has by that point already hit 100,000 subscribers, then you know what? We're going to bring it up with James, okay? And Jim Cameron himself will have words with you, Bob. We'll have words with you, Bob. And you don't want to mess with that guy. He has a submarine that has touched the deepest depths of this earth.
It's going to touch the deepest depths of your soul if you don't give us a 3D Blu-ray.
You don't even know what else it can touch. So yeah, you just be careful.
But yeah, we're talking about doing a watch along when it comes out on 3D Blu-ray, which I think would be so much fun to do on the channel. And then, we're going to have to wait about a year and a half before or 2 years before the next one comes out. But you know what?
Sure.
Take your time. If it's going to look that good,
absolutely.
Take your time, baby. We'll wait.
Yeah,
we'll wait.
You say
you're delaying for another year. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll wait. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, watch Avatar 1 and 2 again in 3D. Don't worry about it.
I got it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about taking time. But let us know in the comments below what you thought about Avatar: The Way of Water. What format did you watch it in? IMAX 3D, Dolby 3D, Real D 3D? If you watched it in 2D, you're dead to me. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe. Check out our watch along of the original Avatar in 3D. And we'll see you guys in the next review. Bye.
Bye.
Maybe my single favorite part is when that fucking captain got his arm ripped off, dude. I was like, fuck yeah,
that was amazing.
Everybody screamed. That was so good.
I was like, good. I hope you bleed to death and die, bitch. Good.
Bleed, motherfucker.